Imagine waking up one cold December morning, going out to do something you love, and then vanishing without a trace. No goodbyes, no warning, just silence. This is the story of Mike Williams, a devoted father whose disappearance sparked a heartbreaking mystery that would remain unsolved for 16 years. But the truth about what happened to Mike is far darker than you ever would have imagined. Today, I will be taking you through every twist, every turn of this chilling case. So stay close, because this story is about to shock you to your core. Hi, my name is Grace. I talk about all things spooky, creepy, freaky, so if that's your vibe, hit the subscribe button below, because I'm a small growing channel, but every little bit helps. Also, I always do this. He's been sitting right here. He's such a good boy. This is Casper. This is my beautiful kitty cat. He is the love of my life, other than Rai Rai, and my sister. Mike Williams grew up in Bradfordville, Florida, which is a small town not too far from Tallahassee. He was known as a bright, athletic man, someone who was loved by family and friends alike. I feel like that's how they always start these stories though. Like, who's gonna be like, yeah, nobody really f***ed with that dude? Well, that's what they always say about the killer. And then they always say about the victim, like, everyone loved him. He was so kind, so smart. It's like, is everybody like that? I guess our dude Mike was. When Mike was just 15 years old, he met Denise Morrill in high school, and they quickly fell in love. But Mike wasn't the only one who was in love. His BFF, Brian Winchester, was dating a girl named Kathy, and the two couples became inseparable. They would go on double dates, they hunted ducks together. It's very Florida of them. They spent nearly every moment enjoying their youth side by side. Mike and Denise married in 1994, and 5 years later, their daughter was born. The joy of Mike's life. I wish my father thought of me that way. He was considered to be like the ideal girl dad. Together, they seemed to have like the perfect life. They had a beautiful home, they had a loving family, classic white picket fence dream. But in Florida. On September 16th, 2000, everything changed forever. Mike woke up before dawn to go duck hunting, a hobby that he loved deeply because he's a Florida man. That morning, he literally kissed Denise goodbye, and he promised that he would be back by noon. That night, they had plans to celebrate their 6th wedding anniversary. So this was on their anniversary, okay? But noon came and went, and Mike never returned. Denise grew worried and began calling family and friends, and soon word spread that Mike had gone missing. So his best friend Brian, along with their fathers, had headed to the lake where Mike liked to hunt. That is where they found Mike's car still in the parking lot and his boat still in the water. The engine of the boat was running, belongings were inside, but Mike was nowhere to be found. And it's important to note that there was a storm that day, and that storm had delayed rescue efforts. But once it cleared, search teams, including divers, helicopters, and cadaver dogs, scoured the area looking for any sort of sign of Mike. And despite searching every little inch of land, every little inch of water, Mike was nowhere to be seen. Authorities initially concluded that Mike had drowned accidentally. And the reason why they thought this happened is because Mike was wearing waders, waters ain't right, WADERS, which are like a special pant that is used for water activities, and they're able to like fill up with water and then like weigh you down. So honestly, maybe they are waters. Maybe it's like the combination of like the word weigh and water. Waders. Waiter? I could Google it. I wrote the damn thing. Anyway, they ended up believing that he was wearing these pants, he fell off the boat, he sank, and then he drowned because he sank to the bottom. But here's where the story gets a little strange. Mike's body never surfaced, even though in the lake, bodies usually float to the surface within like 3 to 7 days. 6 months later, local fishermen found Mike's waters, and his jacket in the water. Mike's pants. They found his pants and his jacket in the water. Both were in near perfect condition without any bite marks or tears. And you have to think, like, we're in Florida, okay? So my first thought would be like, oh, if like they found his clothes but not his body, he got eaten by alligators. And that's what they thought too. But the thing is, if alligators had eaten his body, wouldn't they have damaged his clothes? The clothes had 0 damage on them. And so it's like, okay, if there's 0 damage, that probably means that there isn't a body attached to the clothes. Also, Mike's boat was found with the engine running and a full tank of gas. So if he had fallen off, the boat would have continued moving around in circles until it ran out of gas, but it hadn't moved. And despite the strong storm winds that day, the boat remained where it was first found. These odd details were not adding up. But in February of 2001, Mike was declared legally dead and they closed the case. And you think that would be it, but no, we're just getting started, baby. Mike's mother, Cheryl, refused to believe the initial story. Thank God one of the women in his life gave a shit about him. God. I think it's so sus that this wife wasn't doing much. For nearly a decade, she was convinced that something different, something more sinister must have happened to her son. She had the mother's intuition. She knew something was off. So during this entire decade, Cheryl waged a relentless battle for answers. She wrote weekly letters to the governor of Florida. She hired private investigators. She even paid for billboards that were telling Mike's story. She compiled a 27-page document filled with questions and contradictions about the case. Unfortunately, her fight really strained her relationship with Denise, Mike's ex-wife, who you would think like would be helping her with all of this. Like, your husband dies, why don't you care? And in turn, very tragically, it also hurt her relationship with her granddaughter, where they were not really like on speaking terms. And even though like that was heartbreaking for Cheryl and she was facing all these obstacles with the family, she never gave up hope that justice would come. Years later, new suspicions arose, especially about Denise and Brian. So Denise was a little sloppy. Our girl was sloppy. She had reported Mike's family heirloom weapon missing shortly after his disappearance, only to later find it in her possession. She collected nearly $1.75 million from Mike's life insurance policies, one of which was written by Brian Winchester just months before Mike had vanished. Brian wasn't just Mike's best friend. He was also the insurance agent who set them up with the largest life insurance policy. And so while this was all going on, it came to the surface that Denise and Brian were actually having an affair. And they had kept this secret from Mike years before his disappearance. And after Mike was legally declared dead, Denise and Brian got married. And not only that, they moved into Mike's house. And it's like, that poor daughter, what is she thinking about all of this? And also it's like, how long had this been going on? It seemed like this dark secret had been buried and it had been buried for a while. So it's like, if they were going on all these couples trips and stuff, like, were they just like sneaking off and like banging each other in the other room, like while the other was asleep? Like, you guys met when you were like 16. How long has this been going on? Also, like, I don't know about you, but I couldn't cheat for that long. Like, maybe I could do it once, I won't lie, but like, I never have. But like, I got a big fat mouth on me. I could not function if I was living with my man and I was seeing him every hour of the day. I would explode if I didn't tell him. Even if I told like a girly, I could not keep my mouth shut. I would let him know, just because it's like, D, about me. Now you know I'll always be faithful. Anyway, here's where things get really crazy. So in 2016, Denise goes to the police and she says that Brian kidnapped her. The police suspected there was more going on when she went to him, and she said that though. And so they started talking to Brian, and they ended up cutting a deal with law enforcement where if Brian confessed what really happened to Mike, he would receive immunity from murder charges, which is insane. Like, I'm no lawyer, but it's like, if I get immunity and then I go, yeah, I killed him, then it's like, well, what are we gonna do with that information? Frame someone else? But Brian did admit that on the morning Mike disappeared, he took Mike out on the lake and he pushed him into the water. And when Mike grabbed a tree stump to stay afloat, Brian shot him in the face. Imagine doing that to your bestie. That's your best friend for years and years and years of your life. And you can just go, pew. Insanity. He had some fake hoes around him, our boy Mike. Anyway, he then drove Mike's body nearly 60 miles away to this muddy area and then he buried it. And I mean, no one ever found his body. He did a good job with that. And then to cover his tracks, this two-faced, backstabbing monster joined the search parties for Mike. And he was like pretending to look for him, pretending to help finding him. And while he was doing that, he was misdirecting everyone. Evil. But in December of 2017, Brian was convicted of kidnapping like with the whole Denise thing, and sentenced to 20 years in prison with probation. Now we gotta talk about Denise, because Denise wasn't so innocent either. In May of 2018, Denise was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and accessory after the fact. The following year, she was sentenced to life in prison. Finally, in 2021, justice had finally been served, and Cheryl was like, I feel like I have some peace. She said, Michael has justice. I believe he can rest in peace now, and hopefully she can, I mean, I can't imagine like the loss of your child. You'll never move on from that, but like she can start to, you know, accept things for how they are, and, you know, maybe she can also find a little more peace in that. So like after years of pain and betrayal and relentless fighting, Mike's mother finally has like some sort of peace knowing that like the truth had finally been uncovered, if nothing else. Mike Williams' story is a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the people closest to us are the people that are hiding the darkest secrets and have our worst intentions. And that's really scary to think about. And it's very true. It's very true in life. It's also really beautiful that his mother, I mean, obviously, like his mother loves him and she really fought for him towards the end, even when everyone else had given up on him. She didn't care how long it took. She was going to fight for justice for her son. And I'm so glad she finally got it. Let me know what you thought about this story. I think it's absolutely chilling and heartbreaking. Casper literally is sleeping right now, so, you know, it's the perfect little lullaby from my kitty cat. But comment your thoughts and I will read them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay spooky, guys!